and the partnership that she and Niel and Nicholsons have built with Blenheim. The title of the session is Beyond the Bottom Line, a conscious approach to business. I just want to do a little bit of scene setting for what has become and will be for about the next 30 years at a contractual minimum, a very long partnership between Blenheim Palace and Nicholsons. If I rewind to 2017, and this was a key moment for the estate in which we set out a much more thoughtful, I think, approach to the future of a landed estate. And a landed estate, of course, in some ways can be seen as a bit of a weird anachronism, something from the past. But we feel it's got something very, very unique. There's a sense of permanence in location, which is both a good kind of guardian for the area, but more powerfully gives us a rationale for investing over a much longer time period than many institutions can justify, because we know with certainty that we shall be here in 30, 100, 200 years' time to reap the benefits of long-term good decisions. And we tried to express that with a purpose statement that said, we want to be the lifeblood of the local economy. We want to enhance the lives of local people. We want to share and protect this extraordinary place. And those are nice platitudes, but they're also, of course, ideas which describe fairly clearly a future in which a landed estate that sat in that place ought to have flourished in the long run. Knowing these, of course, were not classic SMART objectives, we then went on to set 10 goals for the 10 years to 2027. And those goals ranged from trebling our contribution to the local economy, measured every year by our partners at Oxford Brookes, training 100 apprentices, and we will shortly go past that goal 2 years early, and it's been an absolute triumph for us. Building 300 truly affordable homes, growing the visitor attraction to a new size, becoming a top 100 employer, restoring £40 million worth of restoration of the palace, which is a massive value and cultural driver for the area, bringing back some of the lost art, building a large endowment to protect the World Heritage Site forever so that it goes on to be the powerhouse of the economy, whatever happens in the outside world. And we saw, of course, the very direct benefit of that in the pandemic when revenues went to zero and we carried on opening and we carried on working. And then finally, doubling the value of our contribution to the community. But in that goal, I skipped goal 5, which embarrassingly was the only goal that paid even lip service to an awareness of our impact on the planet, which was the goal to become a net generator of green energy. And if you think about climate-oriented goals, that's pretty much as basic as it gets. You know, do something slightly profitable with some solar panels. That's not great. I think possibly 2017 was almost the last moment an institution like ours could look at our place and look at our future and not make explicit reference to treading lightly on the planet. I look back and with some shame, and actually in the pandemic period, as you start to reflect, we decided that was nothing like an ambitious enough goal, so we quickly changed horses, and although we've more than surpassed that goal, we now generate about 2.5 times the clean power that we consume. We set a target to hit net zero by 2027, and I'm pretty confident we'll do that. By the way, I'll tell you a story at the end of how easily you can stumble on a goal like that. But then we looked again and thought, net zero for a landed estate that owns masses of land and woodland and that, is that really a challenging target? Is that us fulfilling our responsibilities? And does it fit with a view of our permanence in location that says we shall be in 300 years' time? So whatever happens to our land is not some, when you hear stats like 50 more harvests to go, with certainty Blenheim will be here staring at arid fields in 50 years' time if we've not done something. So we looked again and thought much harder about what we could do if we looked at every single square metre of the estate and set it to work sequestering carbon. If we make a very single-minded target, how far could we go? And now clearly that required a lot of alignment internally. It required skills that we didn't particularly possess. And although we're not light on capital, it required capital that we didn't have to hand. And that meant moving more widely and considering
what partners we needed to work with. Now, clearly an endeavour like that is quite a long-term arrangement. It is not simply a one-year contract with someone. So, it struck us as fairly obvious that we needed to find a partner who shared our values, our views on climate, but also our other values too, because whatever we try to describe in a simple partnership contract, we know it will not describe all the possibilities and challenges that 30 plus years will throw at us. And I'm very pleased to say we found and have worked extensively with just that partner, and she's sitting next to me, and Niel is at the back of the room as well. Nicholsons have been astonishing, and I will talk a bit more at the end about the shared values and what has branched out from one project into a whole series of overlapping projects with a very common theme. So Liz, I shall welcome you to the stand. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Dom. And who would have thought that you'd end up with a chartered accountant, I assume you're chartered accountant, and a chartered environmentalist on the stage together and talking about collaboration and partnership. And this is the whole memo that Trump has certainly missed. We talk about partnerships, and I used to work for Tesco's actually at head office in Cheshunt, and they were big at the time on partnering with their growers and suppliers and producers, and that was a shabby partnership. That wasn't a true partnership of equals. And I think real partnership is when 1 + 1 = 3 or 4 or 5. And we're here today to share our story because actually our partnership, I think, is definitely 1 + 1 = 5. And through that collaboration and partnership, and I want to draw attention to 2 case studies actually, but through that you will see how much we've mutually learned and actually been introduced to other people, like the innovation work that Blenheim are doing. It's mind-blowing. And actually just Laura's work earlier about AI and the connections we could make there. So I think today, and thank you so much B4 for having us all, because today I think is where it's really going to happen in Oxfordshire, and I do think we're in a centre of excellence, as Will mentioned this morning. So, that's Dom's bit, and that's Dom's bit. So Nicholsons. Everybody knows about Blenheim. We're sitting here today in the Marlborough Room, and what a privilege it is to be here. Not so many people know about Nicholsons. We're an Oxfordshire born and bred business. I mentioned my husband Niel. He was actually born here. And Niel and I met at university in Edinburgh. He was a forester, I was an agriculturalist. We didn't agree on a lot of things. It's quite amusing, I'm the one here talking about the environment 30 years later. But we've grown a company together with really strong values. And I was talking to Purple Frog at coffee time about company values and where they should be positioned. And Nicholson's company values are definitely client-centred, purpose-centred. So let me quickly tell you about us. We're focused on creativity. Creativity, we're a garden design studio, landscape architecture studio, amongst other things, and our creativity doesn't just stop there. We're here to think about and solve some of business's thorniest problems, some of the insurmountable challenges. So that's where we come from. We're really dedicated, we have high integrity. I think that goes without saying. But our underpinning cultural value is we have a passion for our planet. So where Blenheim, and I completely understand Dom's very honest and candid narrative about the sort of business plan developing over the time, Nicholson's has always put passion for the planet, almost naively, front and centre, sometimes at the cost of commercial gain. In fact, often at the cost of commercial gain. But I would say more recently, we found the ultimate sweet spot where caring for the planet, caring for the environment, does not cost commercial outcomes. In fact, the very opposite. And I want to show you these 2 case studies where the collaboration has shown a really good pathway. Very quickly then, forestry, woodland management, tree management, if anybody's dealing with property, landscape and gardens, and ecosystem services, an increasing interest in how we look after ecology, our biodiversity, and natural capital, and of course, soils. So, we asked on Slido if people were aware of their scopes or had carried out scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. And Richard, I don't know if you have the data in on that or whether...
We asked it in the pre-event questionnaire, not on Slido, but it was roughly...
Fine.
No.
Roughly no. Okay, that's great. And it may be the... Keltamage. It may be the people answering the questions weren't the people in your organisation dealing with it, but I would argue this is front and centre. It's the single most important thing. How are you ever going to look at your children or your friends' children and their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and say, I did nothing? Really? We're enjoying this wonderful heat wave at the moment, and everyone's saying, oh, Liz, the weather's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing, but we've had no rain, no significant rain for 8 weeks. This is all important, and we should care, because actually, here's the news, our crops haven't had rain either. So it's really important. Task Force for Nature Financial Disclosures. Hands up who's heard about that? Heard about it even? Okay, that's really interesting. So this is big and really important. And it's all of us in business, whatever you're doing, even if you're a marketing agency, it's considering your impacts on climate and nature, and particularly nature on that particular one. So, coming to the point of what problems are we trying to solve? What problems are Blenheim and Nicholsons putting their heads together to try and solve? Well, waste management. The first point to consider is in our soils. So soils in the UK, land-based soils, lock up 94% of our carbon. That's incredibly important, and yet 57% of UK landfill is filled with soil. It's really important. Comes on to the project in a minute. I'm going to share about Pye Homes and why that's so important. Also, it takes up to 200 to 1,000 years, actually, to make 1 centimetre of soil. So if we don't look after our soils and they all run off into the rivers, into Blenheim Lake at great cost to Blenheim, then that's not great, because it's going to take another 1,000 years to make that 1 centimetre of soil that we've just lost. This is all super important stuff. Water. Hands up, everybody who knew a person who got flooded this winter. Their house got flooded. In fact, I had. Yeah. And by 2050, 1 in 4 of us will be involved with property that is going to flood. 1 in 4. That's a huge statistic. And why? Because we're developing our county, our country, not necessarily fully mindfully of how water infiltrates, and so it runs off. It's increasing capacity in our rivers, and hence we haven't got the systems to cope with it, and it floods. It should be stored in the soil, and the soil should be good quality, so it all hooks back to the same thing. Biodiversity, 1 in 6 species are threatened with extinction. Pretty worrying, hey? We can't get them back. Once they're gone, they're gone. People, this is really interesting. With every 10% increase in access to outdoor space, we achieve a 7% increase in mental health. It's super important, us getting out into nature. I really resonated with Laura when she was saying, let's hope AI makes, in fact, I think she's left, so she's not here to talk to you, but let's hope that AI actually makes us less busy. You know, she talked about being on this treadmill, and I think we all relate to that, don't we? We're all looking at our emails 10 o'clock at night thinking, I've still got 40 in my inbox, and I want to empty my inbox. It's nearly unmanageable. It's nearly unmanageable, and yet we should be stopping, taking a walk in the woods, coming back and thinking, delete those 10. I know. And carbon emissions, I've talked about climate change, global warming, is absolute front and centre in the work that Dom and the estate are doing at Blenheim. But I don't think any of us should underestimate their purpose. They are clear of purpose, and they are brave and courageous in this space. So what have Nicholsons done? I mentioned scope 1, 2 and 3. This is what we've done in our business. We've measured everything. The really annoying news, I thought it'd be something really easy, like, okay, it's the concrete we use in laying terraces in gorgeous country houses. It's not that. Our biggest emissions sit in our wire netting to put up deer fences to keep the deer out from grazing the trees that we've planted to sequester carbon. Home goal. Can't do anything about it. We are looking at innovation, and we are looking at eating Bambi. I'm sorry if it's offensive to anybody, but I'm a vegetarian, and even I eat Bambi. So, on to the matter in hand. What happened next? Dom was awake at night worrying about what's he going to do to help these carbon maths. I'm awake at night, what are we going to do to help these carbon maths? And then we came up with this incredible concept that we could plant one of the largest woodlands in England that year. It was 120, in fact it was 145 hectares, 120 hectares of trees planted in Oxfordshire. Oxfordshire, or Chilwell District, whichever, is one of the lowest forested areas in the whole of the UK. We are absolutely bleak for it, and I think that's part of the reason we don't catch rain. You see rain clouds go round, and they miss us by, and I think that's partially to do with it, although I've yet to prove the science on that one. So this is the woodland. You can see the map of it. It extended over several parcels. We took a big OS map, and we looked at very steep slopes. We looked at where the soil, I've just told you how important that is, where the soil was eroding and ending up in the Dawn and Glyme rivers, and then ultimately ending up in Blenheim Lake. We looked at where agriculture was being practiced, but not practiced well, because it was really poor grade land. It was grade 3B and above or below, whichever way you want to take it, poor land. And it shouldn't really be in agriculture at all. It should be a nature asset. And so we designed these woods really carefully. We designed them to sequester carbon. They've got conifers in them. And that's important. And also the other fact we all should know, where we're in construction or we're expecting all these 1.5 million new homes, the homes in Britain at the moment are largely made out of bricks and mortar, very polluting to the atmosphere. If we move more to timber or increase the timber in our homes, then we have a major problem in the UK because we import 80% of our timber needs. And the reason we do that is we do not have fibre security. We're second only in the world to China. Did you know that? So China imports most timber. Britain, we're tiny. We're the second. And that's because we don't have enough woodlands. So Blenheim, being really courageous and planting this massive woodland at the time, was a big, brave thing. And it was all about partnership. So you can see here on the bottom of this slide that we've got Grown in Britain, a charity that facilitates these things. Forest Canopy Foundation, my husband Niel was the founding director of Forest Canopy Foundation, where we got the whole industry, the whole forestry industry. We put us all in the room and said, let's work together. Yes, we're competitors, but we're going to collaborate because the climate emergency is bigger than us. And then Morgan Sindall Group, a massive shout out to Morgan Sindall Group, construction industry company, top of their game in terms of what they're delivering, but their sustainability credentials are so robust. And they met Blenheim, absolutely found a partner, and felt, yes, we can work with them. And Blenheim, of course, bringing the land into the equation. And permanent land use change is quite a brave decision. That's not for the faint-hearted. And I really salute the Blenheim team for actually really proactively chasing the opportunity. What about natural capital? People talk about natural capital valuations. What's it going to be? We all understand carbon and the value of carbon and carbon offsets. Biodiversity is coming racing down the tracks. It's a voluntary offset. If you knew about Task Force on Nature financial disclosures and you'd measured your impact, you'd be knocking on our door, knocking on Blenheim's door and asking to buy nature units to offset your damage that are unavoidable. Of course, we all want to avoid it. If you can't avoid it, then you should be investing in nature. And then we've talked about all the others of water, soils, communities and societies. Interestingly, the woodlands that we've described created 16.5 kilometres of permissive access. And this was just after the pandemic, all this was happening. So you suddenly saw a massive increase in people walking their dogs. And because it's all fenced off and enclosed to keep the deer out, it means you can let your dog off the lead with some safety. So actually it's been hugely popular locally, and I have lots of people stop me and say, oh my goodness, we're so grateful for that. Dom talked about science and innovation and working with Brooks on their on impact, your impact report. Very similarly, similar collaborations are happening on the science that's underpinning this incredible scheme. And I would say this is industry leading as a scheme. So we did a baseline biodiversity, we're looking at our soil organic carbon, we're going to be measuring the carbon canopy as it grows with drone technology. Blenheim have got air quality sensors, and we're looking at water quality. So huge impact that will be measurable and evidenced at some stage. So that's the first project. That's all about forestry and collaborating with Blenheim. Out of that wonderful friendship and partnership, which has had challenges. I don't want you to think we're uncommercial in this. In the first year, we had the biggest drought ever in anybody's lifetime, and 50% of the trees died. 50% of the trees died. Can you imagine picking up the phone to your lovely corporate partner saying, Dom, I'm so sorry. 50% of the trees died. Dom is a realist. He said, Liz, don't stress. It's not your fault. Morgan Sindall Group, who owned the carbon, that was painful. And again, responded on the phone and said, actually, we know that you did your best. And I think we need to de-risk our decision-making. We need to stop worrying about failure, and we need to be brave, and we need to do our best. Back to Aristotle this morning that Will was mentioning. My second project, am I right for time? Somebody managing my time?
Yeah, you got 15.
Have I? Okay, shut me up when you need to. Second project, completely different scenario. Blenheim own Pye Homes. And collaborating with Pye, again, I picked up the phone and said, we've got this project, we've built a model, it's going to save the planet. Liz Optimist. It was all about landscape, architecture, garden design, designing our landscape spaces. Think of some of the new developments in Oxford, north of Oxford, and look at the amount of hard landscaping and the proportion of hard landscaping. It feels a bit off kilter, and it's challenging. All the decisions we make that go through planning and making sure that we're designing sustainable landscapes. So called up Pye Homes and said, can I help you on your next project? And after quite tough negotiation, they're scary, they agreed to collaborate with us. So the collaboration that was already happening, the model's called Elemental, and it's already funded. It's funded by the Royal Horticultural Society. I'm not even going to go through it. The whole industry. We came together and we built this model. And very clear mission to impact climate and nature in designs throughout the UK. This is not Oxfordshire-based, this is UK-based. We are very much at a stage in our journey. We launched in March. We've already got 1,500 users, which is quite incredible for an early stage tool. And this is the Pye Homes development, which is going to be north of Woodstock. And before Elemental, Pye had gone through a pre-app. They'd engaged with a really, really well-respected landscape architecture practice, which I respect very, very highly. And had they been able to stay in the room, it would have been lovely to collaborate with them. They weren't in the room, so Nicholsons took on their design. And we monitored, first of all, we thought, let's put it through Elemental. Let's learn what Elemental would tell us about this development. And here's the news, 270 tonnes of carbon emitted in the landscape alone. Fair enough, what does that mean? You know, that's just a number, what does it mean? Okay, so Nicholson's had a go at it, and we redesigned it, and not just looking at the carbon maths, but also looking at the impacts. Remember I was saying biodiversity, soils, people and communities, water and air. We looked at all the metrics, and we ran it through another tool. We redesigned it. We took out tarmac fire tender tracks, and we put in Hoggin fire tender tracks, checking with a structural engineer all the way. We put in more nature corridors. They actually already had allotments, but we took the allotments from being heavily built to actually more organic, like you'd find in your local village. We tried to give it a sense of place, you know, a sense of Woodstock, sense of Blenheim, sense of village, actually, rather than urban. And here's the comparative dashboard. So pre-elemental design, 270 tonnes of carbon. Post-elemental design, 130 tonnes of carbon. We more than halved the carbon impact through intelligent, guided design. And then on the other aspects, so materials management, soils, water and air, biodiversity, people, blah, blah, blah. Before Elemental, 116 was the score. What does that mean? After Elemental, 285. That's good, by the way, if the score goes up, because it means you've considered it, you've taken time, you've built a soil management plan, you've looked at your materials management plan. So this is really exciting, and we were able to sit down with West Oxfordshire District Council and share these dashboards and say, I know it's different to the pre-app, but we believe it's better for the following reasons, and it was measurable. And the good news, don't know why that's not working. We'll never know the good news. Oh, the good news is, I'm nearly at the end, obviously. The good news is, the first question actually the council asked, which I thought was an interesting one, was, is it cheaper? And I thought, well, I don't know that I genuinely hadn't thought about it at that point. So I went away and I worked it out. And yes, it's massively cheaper to design environmentally. In this example, it might not be every time. But interestingly, we're also working for Bicester Motion, Bicester Innovation on a project there, which is very exciting. And they approached us because of Elemental. They said, actually, that's quite interesting. We're really about sustainability. Can you look at our project? And very much the same narrative. It's had a very similar outcome with similar metrics. So I really believe in the power of what we could achieve here. So, the impact of the Pye-Nicholsons collaboration, I'd like to believe that when we try to deliver our 1.5 million homes, that actually we will be influencing how we build them, that they're built sustainably for climate and nature. The Elemental tool is collaborating with lots of other people like Vectorworks and Building with Nature, other larger frameworks, so it will have, we hope, have very integrated solutions and be national. The most important thing, and I'm unashamedly mentioning it now, we do need some funding, actually, to take this to the next stage. So if any business is there thinking, I don't even know where to start, but I'd really like to lob 20 grand into Liz's project and help her deliver this nationwide, then I would really like to talk to you over lunch, because that's our next challenge. Apart from that, thank you very much.
I think that elemental thing sounds like a county council kind of challenge. Just in case this sounds like we're in bragging territory, we've messed yeah, not just losing 50% of our trees in the first year, with a member of this aristocratic family saying, well, why didn't you water them? And we had to explain that 300,000 trees is a lot of watering. But yeah, I was fascinated to find, and I think Liz and I don't think this will work, but some of our forestry team, and innovation is right through this estate, so we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But some of our forestry team who care for the ancient woodland of Hyde Park, taking sort of pint glass-sized plugs of soil with the mycorrhizal fungal network from the ancient woodland in it, and desperately trying to transplant it throughout the new planting. We think the plugs are probably too small, but wow, what incredible thinking that they would try to build those resilient networks early. In terms of successes and failures, of course, just 2 stories from our last year, and our carbon journey is kind of going to plan, albeit it's going to plan in terms of the absolute numbers. The way we're actually achieving it is completely off plan. We bought some land a year ago off the lower road running from Longhambra down to Cassington, and it had been farmed hard for as long as I could know. We bought it to be part of the Botley West Solar Farm, which is currently in its public examination phase. And because we expect to have panels on it, we let it grass over. So using the satellite data that you can now get to help you estimate what your land care decisions are doing to carbon, we discovered that we just brilliantly, accidentally saved 10,000 tons of carbon that was now sequestered into that land. So I would like to say we're geniuses, except, of course, we had no idea. It didn't cross our mind. And I can demonstrate that because at almost the same time, we took, we had let some land as paddocks for many decades out near Wootton, and it was handed back for us. It wasn't needed anymore. It was right next to fields that we actively farm. So we said to our farming partner, would you mind taking that into the tenancy and farming it? Minus 4,000 tons of carbon released from the land. Again, we didn't think about that. It's an interesting spin out for us that if you look at our carbon journey, then about 2/3 of our baseline carbon emissions are the carbon costs of the visitor journeys to Blenheim, whether that's the whole carbon cost of someone driving from Birmingham to here and back, or whether that's a sort of an honest, factual, fractional calculation of the carbon incurred when someone flies from China to here and spends 2 weeks in the country, and we are half a day of that or something like that. But one thing that has been really successful for us is being very honest with people's carbon journeys as they buy their tickets and estimating the carbon cost. And for those who can't be diverted by that revelation into taking a greener form of transport here, we offer carbon offsets in the forms of genuinely additional tree planting in the park, pretty much all so far. And again, that comes absolutely off the spine of the work that Liz has done. It's a partnership that will absolutely stand the test of time. We solve new problems together. And I think what's interesting is the way our innovation group has drenched some of this area in genuinely remote sensors measuring everything from the sound, they say with a straight face, the sound of grass growing and the heartbeat of trees that they're measuring. What we're doing is building a very, very scientifically sound baseline of what happens when you make different decisions about your land care. And that's something that then goes back and informs work that Liz is doing. And we share apprentices. So I think only organisations that genuinely think about life the same way can share apprentices, but we do on the forestry side. Liz's apprentices get massive experience that they would not normally get about caring for anything from ancient woodland here to new planting, and our apprentices get amazing experiences with Liz. The innovation side, I know, will just go from strength to strength because both of us have the same mindset about how we change what we do. I shall draw to a halt there. I think there's probably a couple minutes for questions if you have them, but we won't be terribly offended if there are no questions. But thank you for your attention so far.